Once upon a time, in medieval Europe, there was a blacksmith named Roland. His house was just outside the village in a little cottage with a thatched roof and smoke drifting from its chimney. As far as the villagers were concerned, Roland was a good guy. He fixed their tools and mended their pots and pans. And that's about all they knew about him. They didn't know that every evening after dark, when the moon hung heavy in the sky, Roland would tend to his real forge. In his big stone oven, he hammered red-hot metal until it shone like a mirror and became hard as diamonds. He made maces, swords, and breastplates. Swords, some with long, slender blades for thrusting, and others with short, stubby ones for chopping. Shields, too. He made plenty of shields, round and oval, small and large, each one capable of turning aside the fiercest blows. And spears. Oh, he made hundreds of spears, their points so sharp they could pierce a man's armor like it wasn't even there. But while his work was good, Roland's hands were rough and cracked, like tree bark or an old leather saddle. And his thick leather apron was always dusted with soot, which made him look more like a chimney sweep than a skilled craftsman. So the other villagers made fun of him. "Hey, Roland," they'd say, as he walked through the market square. "Did you get your hands dirty today? What are you up to now?" And then they'd laugh. Or they'd point at his dusty clothes and shout, "Looks like you got a new broom, Roland. Are you sweeping chimneys tonight?" Roland would just smile and keep walking. He didn't care what they thought of him. He liked his work and was proud of it. And besides, there was no one else in the village who could make things as good as he could. Then one day, a messenger arrived from the neighboring kingdom. "We're coming," he said, holding out a sealed envelope. "The king wants you to come with me." Roland looked at the royal seal, puzzled, but accepted the invitation and set off down the dusty road. The messenger led him to a huge castle, surrounded by tall, crenellated walls and guarded by men in shining armor. When they entered the courtyard, Roland saw a group of knights practicing with wooden swords. Their armor gleamed in the sun, and their shields were painted with the king's emblem, a golden lion on a red field. "You sent for me, your majesty," Roland said to the king. "Yes," the king replied, motioning for Roland to approach. "I heard you were the best blacksmith in the land. I need someone to make me a special sword." "I'm the best," Roland said proudly. "But there are others here, too. These men," he gestured to the knights. "Are you sure I can't help? No. This is a special request. Only the best will do, and I believe you are the best." The king nodded slowly. "Good. Then let's begin." Roland spent a week at the castle, eating the finest food and sleeping in a room with a canopy bed. But he didn't have time to relax. The king wanted his sword finished quickly. Day and night Roland worked at the royal forge, stirring the fires and hammering red-hot metal. Finally, when the last rays of sunlight were fading from the sky, he finished the blade. It was longer than any sword he'd ever made, and its point was as sharp as a needle. "My thanks, Roland," the king said, taking the sword and testing its balance. "You have served me well," and with that he dismissed him. As soon as Roland was out the castle gates, a knight ran up to him. "Hold it right there, Blacksmith," he snarled, gripping Roland's shoulder. "The king has banished you from the kingdom." "What?" Roland cried. "But why?" "I finished his sword. He doesn't want anyone else to have such skill. You might make a weapon for our enemies, so he's taking no chances." Before Roland could reply, two burly guards grabbed him and dragged him toward the town, where a mob of angry townspeople had gathered. "Get him," the knight shouted. "Take him to the riverbank and leave him there. Let him sleep with the fishes." Roland was tied up and tossed into the water, where he struggled to free himself from the ropes as angry shouts echoed across the bank. But no one came to help. Exhausted and defeated, Roland floated on his back, watching the stars as the cold water closed over his head. When he opened his eyes, he was lying on the ground in his cottage. Outside, the sun was just beginning to rise. Had it been a dream? No. The rope marks on his wrists were still there, as were the pebbles that had worked their way under his skin. Just then, a knock came at the door, and in walked the messenger from the king's castle. "Are you all right, Roland?" he asked. "The king's knights attacked me," Roland said, struggling to sit up. "They threw me in the river, but somehow I made it home." The messenger looked grave. "Then we have to leave right away. The king's knights are burning down your cottage as we speak." Roland and the messenger ran outside just in time to see flames rising above his thatched roof. Together, they fled to the village where Roland told everyone what had happened. And then, as if on cue, the king's men arrived, their swords drawn, their armor gleaming in the morning sun. "Stand aside, peasants," one of them shouted. "Our king wants this village for himself." But the villagers weren't afraid anymore. Maybe it was because they'd never felt so helpless as they did the night before. But this time, they were ready. They took up their weapons and prepared to defend themselves. Roland fought alongside them, his sword flashing in the sunlight as he cut one of the knight's lances clean in half. Enraged, the knight charged at Roland, but he dodged the blow and slashed at the man's shield. Again and again, Roland struck, and finally the knight fell, his armor clattering to the ground. One by one, the rest of the king's men met the same fate, and soon the village green was littered with broken weapons and discarded armor. When the sun went down, the villagers stood among the smoking ruins of Roland's cottage and cheered. They had won, not because of a great king or fearsome dragon, but because of a blacksmith who never gave up his craft. Even when he was mocked, even when he was exiled, even when his life was in danger. Roland continued working at his forge, making weapons for anyone who needed them. And that is why the villagers were able to win their freedom. Greatness is not always seen in shining moments, but in quiet, relentless labor.